So Jeff Lutz tells me that he's been tooting around in his various vehicles and he has, I mean, sure, I know you guys want to talk about the stock price, but I'd like Jeff to first of all talk about his feelings about where we really are on the journey, the FSD journey. Jeff.
Yeah, great to be with you, Randy. What I view is, I see the releases, the flurry of releases in September. It's one thing to release software. It's another thing to integrate features and to really be moving the ball forward. And that's what Tesla seems to be doing. We don't know on the outside of the company, did they meet that 3x improvement milestone they put in that September delivery notes? It sure feels like it if you're comparing it to 12.5.4 or sorry, 12.4 or 12.3. It sure feels like it, but it's hard to know what the reference is. But it seems like the builds are getting smoother. They're not perfect, but they're adding features and functionality. And for me, the big takeaway is this is an operation that's up and it's humming. They've got hardware 3 and 4 synchronized. They've got the Cybertruck release. I've been driving around, or the Cybertruck's been driving me around, and it is it's an unexpected feeling. The Cybertruck was already just an incredibly smooth ride, and then to have it being driven for you is just to me the next level experience. And I haven't gone far distances on highway, so I want to get more end-to-end highway information as well. But I'm excited about that because, quite frankly, I'm starting to see the gap between city street driving and end-to-end highway driving in the non-Cybertruck vehicles that don't have that end-to-end stack update. So my takeaway is it looks like Tesla's really scaling this operation, and I think that's a very good sign. And the super cluster is not even up in Texas producing these results. This is
Right.
you know what they have running in California, I believe. So to me, it tells me as they bring more compute on, it seems like they've got a model, a system running, and now they can expand this thing, grow it, and really drive significant improvements. So I'm not in the camp of we've reached the promised land. I don't think so. But if I look at either in 6 month chunks or 1 year chunks, and where were we a year ago? We were on V11. We had some preview of V12 of Elon driving around with the Shoke in August, and then we had nothing for call it six
Right.
months. And when I say nothing, I mean we didn't get that big improvement. So when I look at where we're at a year later, and all the vehicles have it, and there's been multiple releases, and how it's just performing, I just love to think where we're going to be a year from now.
Okay. So, people are, making those kind of guesses based on your experience, and you have some, pretty good experience in on the software side as well. If you were gonna, make that ridiculous guess, would you say like some are saying, "Oh no, we're still 5 years away or 4 years away," or would you be like Larry and you're like mid next year, or would you be even more optimistic than that? Where would you fall in that group?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I would say is I have been in the mode of having to, partner with teams and come up with schedules and then provide schedules to management or provide schedules to customers to say this is what we're going to deliver by when. And it does include a software component. All I'll say here is this is going to be extremely difficult to predict because no one's ever solved the end problem. So there's that variable. And we don't have a year or 2 years or anybody that knows, like, how do you predict the progress of, neural nets in place of heuristic code and what kind of progress we're going to get there. And we've never run and had training done on clusters of this size. Like there's too many unknowns. So I've seen people come out and say, we're 5 years away. I heard somebody say that there's no way that we're giving an unsupervised ride next year. And my answer is, I don't know how to predict that because the variables are unknown. We No one's ever done this, and we don't have the runtime on end-to-end neural net software to know what kind of cycles of improvement we'll ultimately get. So I'm not trying to provide a non-answer. I'm trying to say from someone who's had to predict schedules and predict plans, I don't know how you do it with this one. So I don't know how you guess near term. I don't know how you can be bullish and favorable, saying it's coming in a couple months. And I don't know how you can say. The only thing I think you can do, so the only thing I would say if you're in Larry's camp and it's coming in the summer is like, well, you can start stitching together a couple of releases and say, look, from 12.3 to where we are today, I mean, there's some fairly significant improvements. And then you go back to 12.1, I think, from, February, March. And you, okay, now you can start stitching together some data points. But it's still, I think it's difficult. I really do. I mean, I think it's very difficult. I think it, I think though, but Tesla is building a plan though that will work in this construct. And I believe starting with a supervised network and then going to an unsupervised network, I believe they're setting their business up for transformation. And there doesn't necessarily have to be it must be ready by this date kind of thing. It'll be like one of these things of like nobody's going to get there faster at a better economic model than Tesla. And the question is when do they get there? Is it end of 2025? Is it first half of 2026? And does that matter when the others may be some, you know,
Many years.
unquantifiable schedule behind that?
So you're in the camp, as I know, about, supervised driving. Can you think of any good reason to delay the beginning of supervised rides? Just, it seems to me like they could make it 10, 11 and do it, I mean, what's to hold that back?
Well, I mean, is the vehicle ready side and is the Tesla network ready piece of it. And I think you could have, there could be some decent confidence in that Tesla's doing financial transactions today in the app with supercharging, with all kinds of things. So Tesla knows how to take your money and Tesla knows how to pay you. I think there's examples of them doing rebates and so forth and doing credits in the app. So I think this whole financial transaction thing Tesla's been working on. By the way, this is how Tesla does business. They have a vision that's out in the future, and then there are these many components that have to be put together over time, and you maybe can't see them because they're disaggregated. But all of a sudden, they start. Oh, that's why you were gathering all of my driver scoring data, or that's why you're setting up this insurance business, or this is how you're doing that. Um, so I think the only thing. So first off, Tesla should provide a schedule of when if they're doing the supervised network. I shouldn't be presumptuous.
Right,
It's what I
right.
think they're going to do. The thing that I don't have a deterministic schedule on would be, is there some sort of regulatory approval needed to provide rideshare services in various jurisdictions? I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's very knowable. I mean, in other words, there's been plenty of ride hail services that have started, and I'm sure there's consultants and all kinds of people that can help with that part of the
Yeah.
deal. And maybe they want to do it national all at once, but you wouldn't have to. Certainly every single one of these people has rolled it out region by region. So it wouldn't be shocking to say, okay, we're only going to do it in San Francisco, like everybody else has started in San Francisco for some unknown reason.
Right.
So yeah, I just would be, I know that the shareholders would love it. I think the market would love it if there was a date certain. We are starting ride hail with existing vehicles with supervised drivers on this date, and here's how the finances work.
Yeah, you may get a quarter or a month or a quarter out of Tesla at this if they are doing the supervised network. I think they should be able to predict that. And if I were them, I think it would be imminent. I think, I don't, I think there would be a problem in expectations on 1010 if the products shown and the services shown aren't available for another year. I think that there would be somewhat of a whatever.
Yeah.
Not to say that there won't be new services a year from now. There will be. There will be unsupervised, and then there'll be this new futuristic robo taxi that costs less to build, has all the latest Tesla tech, and doesn't have, it's a completely different industrial design in the inside. It's an experience to be sitting and riding, not driving. So, but yeah, I think expectations would be, I think if we walk out of 1010 and Tesla announces the Tesla network and some sort of rapid deployment, I think the city by city thing Um, what's interesting is, when Tesla released FSD, they didn't release it in San Francisco. They honestly, there's an early user group, but those early users are all over the country.
Right.
They're in Michigan, they're in the Bay Area, they're all over the place. So I don't know why the Tesla network couldn't be. There is no national standard on ride sharing that I'm aware of. There's
Right.
no, yeah.
But there are
So, and even, and
there are regional restrictions. There's airport
correct,
problems, and there are cities that have
correct.
rules, and they have New York City, which obviously has their cab special,
Right.
circumstance. So there are those
Yeah.
kinds of things. Yeah. Yeah. For the
Yeah.
most part, I'm not sure there was any real significant problems. All right. Well, so that would be that would be, I think, the key thing on, I think, pretty much everybody that I know's mind is, will we have a date certain for supervised? Obviously, we know there's going to be a robocab or a cyber cab that we're going to get to see, but we're all expecting that for the middle of next year sometime. So that's just really eye candy for now. Do you think there will be what's your current feeling on 2.5? Do you think they'll show a 2.5 vehicle also as a, you know,
These interim lower cost vehicles. The only way I think they show them is if they're ready to build within a couple of months. Like you could basically order them and have a January to February type delivery window. I think that's the only way they show them, and I don't think they're ready for that. So I don't think they show them, but I do think there's more than just showing the robotaxi in the service. So that's where you get into We Robot, and is Optimus making an appearance with its brand new final design, at least for the
right,
for the small production volume
right.
version of Optimus? Does that make an appearance? Is it playing the piano, or is it doing something exceptional that it couldn't do before without the degrees of freedom in the hand? Um, you know, it, does the Roadster make an appearance? That was supposed to be,
Right.
finalized by the end of the year. I think there is going to be a
One more thing.
surprise. I
Oh,
don't want
one
to get
more thing.
everyone's hopes up, but um, Elon said this is going to be one for the history books. So, are there partnerships that are announced on that day?
Well, there was
Are
a hint. There was a hint of that
Yeah.
today. Did you see the hint? Do you think that
Yeah,
was
and I don't know what to
it
make
was
with that.
real?
I know there's people cheering it on, there's people throwing cold water on it, and I think there's plausibility on either side of that argument.
Well, first of all, we have to say what it was. So we had a picture of a McDonald's bag, a bag from McDonald's, and it said 1010 on it, and said not a Big Mac. Had a couple of other
Yeah.
maybe hints on it. And we also have Elon following the marketing director for McDonald's as of this morning, I guess. So that seemed to be
Yeah,
some
and I don't know why people are yeah.
poo-pooing it. Yeah. I mean, even Sawyer.
I was just saying, I don't know why people yeah, dunking. I don't know why people are sorry, Randy, go ahead, please.
No, no, that's it. Yeah. Go.
No, I didn't know why people were dunking on this, saying like this is impossible, or there's no way it's going to happen, or it's all a pure coincidence. It's not a pure coincidence. The not a Big Mac thing is a direct connection to not a flamethrower and not a torch and all the different things that Tesla has Elon has done before. So anyway, this is going to be not a rideshare service, but it is, and so to have that on the receipt and to say 1010 enter the chat. I mean, there's a lot of clues there, and to say, oh, this is just some streamer and this is his chair, whatever. I mean, maybe that streamer is going to be part of the unveiling of that partnership. No idea.
No
So
idea.
who knows? It could be nothing. It could be something, but I think there's merit on both sides. But I think there's more merit on the side that there's actually something there.
I
McDonald's employs 2 million people worldwide.
Yeah, I suggested maybe even to you on this show months ago, maybe it was to, I can't remember to whom, but I said, I think, I was figuring for a partnership with In-N-Out along the same lines as the Cybertruck partnership with Pepsi. Put an Optimus. I mean, the same thing that they're doing
Semi.
with all these BMW partnerships with the other companies. just, stick a robot in the corner in the test labs of McDonald's someplace and let them start flipping burgers, or doing whatever kinds of things that would make sense for the robot to do. We know that McDonald's is really all about automation right now, obviously automating their kiosks and their in the front room. They're getting to the point where you can barely get a hamburger if you don't know how to operate the automated kiosks.
Yeah, and I should say that I have done some work in my company in consulting with food automation, and what I would tell you is food automation needs to go through the general industrial automation loop first. Like, there's no reason that you can't make a fully automated line to make a Chipotle bowl. Now, wrapping a burrito is a different conversation.
Right.
Becomes a little bit more difficult, but there's no reason why. And there is this automation. There's some prototype automation that's out there right now where you can make a Chipotle bowl and you can get all the right weights and measurements in the right order and have it look beautiful and have it look consistent coming out the other side. And they've got a machine now that can peel the avocados and get them mashed. There's a machine that's doing the frying of the chips. Like, these are all things. Food automation can go through a pretty big I would call it conventional industrial robotics automation loop. And then whatever's left to me is then there's a humanoid opportunity there. But I don't know, it could be a number of things. It could be some sort of rideshare partnership. It could be, or it could be nothing, or it could be superchargers at every McDonald's. That could be another thing. We
Right.
don't know. I mean, there's so many different things you can do now that Tesla has all these different businesses that you can speculate on.
Yeah, my son worked at In-N-Out for several years, and so and he because I'm so interested in that kind of stuff, I ended up really paying attention to the process of training and everything else. And I mean, something like merely putting the potatoes into the boiler and then pulling them out again, and the French fries, and then pulling them out again. I mean, it's a kind of a dangerous position and not very much fun. Out of all the jobs they have, there is probably the least fun is that job. And it seems like something that Optimus could do tomorrow, and
Mhm.
potentially provide some less potential for somebody getting burned, making it
Right.
almost 100% accurate every single time. Nobody forgets to pull it off out of the oil, etc. So I mean, I just think there's real potential for something like that, which is why I recommend it in the first place.
Yeah, and just there is work that's being done because of like the injury loop and there is an industrial robotics automation loop that you can go through for specifically for frying, and there's a lot of work that's actually being done on that. I don't think you need a humanoid. What the benefit you get though with a humanoid is the faster setup and the faster training loop that will eventually be available. And then of course the cost structure. And if you've got to pop up another establishment, that whole ramp up time is key. So anyway, yeah, you can debate this. This can be a
Right, right,
whole
right,
show
right.
within itself. But yeah, anyway, it's exciting. I think we're 10/10's approaching, and I think this is going to be an important moment for Tesla.
All right, so let's talk about the numbers this morning. We had, exactly what the street was predicting, which was surprising. We had a lot of misses by some of the best analysts. In fact, almost all the best analysts were high. And now we're sitting with a need to do 520,000 next quarter in order to even get back to last year's numbers. So, what did you think in general about the numbers this morning? What do you think about our chances of having a beat for the year now that we only hit 461, 463?
Uh, I think the Tesla business is moving in a direction where where the delivery results off by 1,000 or 2,000 or whatever is so much less important than the transformation the business is going through. By the way, I'm not saying that they shouldn't make numbers, they shouldn't control inventory, they shouldn't control costs. That's not the message. It's just this for me, like if this number was 430, I'd say, okay, there's a bit of a problem. If the number was 490, I wouldn't have been like, whatever, we're off to the races. I think we're in a macro auto slowdown. You've seen the triple warnings from VW. You saw Aston Martin, you saw VW, Aston Martin, all of them being Mercedes, everybody's, it's some
Stellantis,
sort of
Stellantis, huge.
Stellantis. Yes, Stellantis is huge. They went from plus 5 or 6 billion in cash to negative 5 or 6. And yeah, so you're seeing the string of warnings. Ford is, their ICE business is now is basically, regressing, but they are shipping more hybrids and they're doing a little bit more in EV. But here's the thing, when you step back and look at all this, no other company besides the Chinese automakers and Tesla are building an EV business that will scale. Ford, GM, Stellantis have all pulled back on their CapEx. What you saw them, like, oh, we sold 32,000, we launched the Equinox, we sold, you have to be careful. We're not comparing the same numbers. They are sending cars into wholesale dealer lots, and then they sit in those dealer lots, and we see, you know, they were at 150 days of inventory across legacy EV. I don't have the exact numbers in front of me. And I know they brought it down.
Right.
And when people look at these numbers, I'm like, well, you have to keep in mind that not only are they doing the same financing deals Tesla is doing, but they're doing dramatic MSRP reductions as well, which Tesla is not doing anymore. So you have to be careful. You have to look at what you really have to look at is registrations, one, two. You have to look at inventory, number two. And then three, you got to put all that together and saying, are they growing inventory or are they flushing inventory and massively discounting product? Like, do they have, and then you have to look at EBIT margins. Like, do they have a business that's, profitable and throwing cash off? And you can't just look at one component. And I had somebody, asking about, market share. I'm like, well, first off, you got to look at registrations for market share. You can't look at,
Right.
anyway. So when I step back and look at it, China seems to be strong for Tesla, but also strong for the Chinese automakers, but they're living below $30,000.
Yes.
And Tesla's getting these numbers above $30,000 and dominating in the 30 to 50K range. So when Tesla enters that chat, below 30,000, I think it'll be a different conversation in all regions, not just China. So yeah. So I think earnings, it's going to be interesting to see. Did they get a bunch of growth? Did they pull a bunch of earnings in relating to full self-driving? Did they get a bunch more regulatory credits? And did they find the bottom on gross margins? Remember, they produced 470,000 units.
Right.
So the question is, were they able to make some real progress on COGS? I don't see inventory moving up a whole lot. Maybe it's around 18 days,
Inventory
maybe
was good.
19.
CERN
Yeah.
said that still 18 days. So he did the analysis.
Yeah. So So this is a solid business going in the fourth quarter. Are they going to hit 520? My guess is no. Because we are still under the lagging effects of massive rate hikes. The consumer has not gotten a break yet, even though we cut 50 basis points a couple of weeks ago. There's no real break for consumers.
No.
And their savings are being depleted. We see what's going on not till you get to 300, we're not going back to zero interest rates. So the question is like, okay, when you're thinking about Tesla and you're thinking about deliveries, you have to start stitching a couple of quarters together. You can't just like over rotate on one. So I would be fast forwarding into like the first half of next year. And what are these new lower cost vehicles coming into the picture? Tesla guided for 50% higher production. Was that a formal guide? Or, so I think there's some interesting conversations you could have, but in general, it looks like it's going to be back to a path of growth. It's just a question of how much. And then Tesla, if there is a macro auto thing going on, which it looks like there is, Tesla should be climbing out of that, well in advance of these other guys because they have 100 days of inventory and Tesla has 18.
Right. Yeah. And I would also think that if we do, in fact, get a robo-taxi network decision, a date by which, that will create some additional demand because there will be people that will want to buy a a Tesla in order to be able to make it into a business. There will be people that want to buy 2 or 3 in order to turn it into a business. But I think we need that actual date buy. If it's even if it's January 1, if Elon says no, January 1, we're going to have a robotaxi network. Now, I think it'd be smarter to have that start November 1, because you got all those holidays with all those really good, all those parties that you can be picking people up from during November and December. But whatever the day is, if there's a date certain, I think then the entrepreneurial types will start saying, it's time to start building, whether I'm going to buy 3, whether I'm going to buy 10. It's time to start putting the set together, because you can turbo them in the meantime. It's not like you can't make money on them in the meantime.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, for people, I mean, look, people talk about this supervised network and like, I'm never going to do that with my car. Yeah, a lot of people won't do that with their car, but you're not everybody.
Yeah.
Okay. And there are people that are entrepreneurial that will create businesses. And the question is how good is a network? What's the cost structure? What's the profit look like for the driver versus if they were in an Uber situation? We know that energy is cheaper versus driving a gas, Uber car. We know there's a lot of things that make the business model work better for this. So it's a question of what does it look like? There's billions of Uber rides given per year.
Right.
Billions.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's a market.
Absolutely. So on the economic side, the only real thing that I saw was the �伊𝐞𝐽 came out, and he said the number of he always finds these things that if I was looking better, I would see. He says the number of new hires as a percentage of total employment dropped to 3.3 in August, the lowest since 2013, except for the pandemic, of course. And then since November of 2021, the hiring rate has fallen by 1.3 percentage points, a comparable decline to the one seen in the 2008 financial crisis. It says the hiring rate is now below the 2015 to 2019 average, where it was 3.8 for 14 consecutive months. It says the share of workers voluntarily quitting is down to the lowest point since 2020. In other words, Americans' confidence that they can find a new position has dropped to recessionary levels. So we keep getting, like today, the ADP numbers were good. Tomorrow we'll get the weekly numbers on the number of people that are applying for unemployment. Friday we get the real number, the big number. No, not the real numbers. We get the numbers that never make any sense because they're always completely wrong. But at least we'll get the revised numbers for the last 2 months, and we'll get something somewhere closer to true, maybe. What do you think about this? Do you think unemployment is, or employment is in a problematic level right now, or just back to normal?
It's hard. So, okay, it's hard to say like that we have some sort of crisis on our hands when we're, adding north of 100,000 jobs a month. But I think this could turn. I think it could move quickly. By the way, October, I think there's going to be some pretty noisy data. I mean, this port strike started.
Yeah.
Who knows how long this thing is going to go?
Boeing's on
goes for an extended period of time. It's one thing about the longshoremen. It's another thing about what other businesses stop because they don't have materials coming in. And what does that do to the employment picture? So October could really create a messy thing on the employment side, depending on how long this goes, and it could create a messy thing on the inflation side and even GDP. If you think about it, if you don't have the product coming in to build what you need to build here, then you're going to affect GDP.
Yeah, some people were even saying that one of the industries that will be most affected is auto. And I don't know enough about that to know whether these East Coast or Southern ports are bringing in some of the parts that are needed to put cars together.
Sure.
Okay, that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Sure. There's the cost differential of air versus going by containers, there's a big difference. And there's, if you think of like the automakers in the US, you think of the foreign automakers in the US, they have a lot of their part supply base is back home in Europe, for example. So I think a lot of them are going to get hit pretty hard. And then, there's certain parts that, that US automakers source and they would need to bring in from that port. Now, everybody has known about this date for a long time. Okay. The question is did they pull the trigger and did they reroute? One, two, it doesn't come for free. There's a time delay, which causes you to bring in more, hold more inventory, and there's a cost delay. I mean, sorry, there's a cost increase from doing this.
Right.
And whether you're doing an expedite or whether you're doing a reroute, there's going to be a cost delay. So there's definitely going to be some impact. This the
And
question is
where do you bring it in? Are there East Coast Mexican ports? Because I've done this a
no,
lot of times.
you
I've had to reroute on the West Coast, but I've never had to reroute on the East Coast. So sometimes we might bring it in on the East Coast, train it across, or we bring it into New Orleans and train it over to California. Or we bring it in from Vancouver or from Puerto Vallarta. But where do you do it if you're on the East Coast if you don't have these?
you would have rerouted from the point of origin most likely. I mean, these aren't like these ships are on the sea and like, oh, we got to move them. I hope not. There shouldn't be a lot of those. So you would have rerouted from the point of origin. And yeah, I mean, I don't know which the name of the port that's
Yeah, yeah,
the last one that's furthest west on this Gulf shutdown, but it's going to be one of those that you do a lot of rerouting to, or they reroute from the point of origin. They go to West Coast ports, and it's some longer, you
right,
know, it's some longer route, or they go by air.
right, right. Yeah, I suppose they might even go up to. I mean, the Los Angeles ports are always so busy, but I suppose they could be looking at Seattle or San Francisco, maybe even Vancouver. But
Yeah,
anyway,
there's a
yeah.
lot on
So
the
I was
West
curious.
Coast.
I was curious about because yes, and I agree with you. They would have already been rerouting, but we're talking about the busiest time of year for the ports. Although a
Yeah,
lot
and the
of
other
this,
the other big misconception, Randy, is people think like they'll hear numbers on the news of like, oh, but we've got 70% of everything already inbound and docked from what we need for the holidays.
right,
That's not good. When people don't understand in stock percentages, they don't understand like 70% is not a good
not
number. You will
good.
start seeing massive stock outs of things pretty quickly. Some things will have a different timer on them than others, but in stock levels is a very difficult thing to manage in supply chain. And you know, when you hear a number that's in the 70s or 80s, you're going to be really seeing empty shelves.
Yeah,
And when you start thinking of in stock percentages, so I think people have to look at the numbers and just be very careful about what they're listening to and just not trying to internalize. That's the other thing I always get with utilization. Like people think like factories should be running at 100% utilization. Like, no, that's
no.
actually not a good thing.
I think I've told you the story before. I'm not sure, but we had a month one time where for the very first time we could do $1 million in a single month. And we broke our every we yeah, well, we actually did break. We actually missed it by, I mean, a few thousand, but we broke everything. The equipment broke down, the people broke down.
Yeah.
We actually lost money that month. It was just horrible because it's
Yeah.
not how factories should be run. All right, last question of the day. This is the first question probably everybody wanted to hear, but the stock was down 11 during, well, eventually I think ended up down about nine. No, not only about, but exactly on the penny, $9. And last time I looked, it was down in after hours, another buck. Let's see. Yeah, 89 cents. So was that knee jerk? Was that, hey, we've gone up 85% since the 6 month ago low, and this is a good excuse to blow off? Was there something that we missed that happened that that would cause this to be? Because I mean, getting it on the nose practically of what the street was asking for, and only a few thousand less than the whisper number, wouldn't seem to normally have caused a 10-point drop.
Yeah, and again, I'm not giving advice to anybody per se, but what I noticed was, the volume was just average. It wasn't like there was some strong message from the market of like tons of volume. We're all in there selling. This is trash. The volume was pretty average when you had a big event like a delivery day. So I didn't see a strong message from the market. The strong message I did see was it closing, nowhere near the low, and it was kind of like it kind of split the difference on the day, and to me that's kind of a strong favorable message that there's more gas in the tank. Again, I'm not giving anybody, I don't daily trading advice on what to do, but I think a lot hinges on the outlook that Tesla gives for 10. I mean, I think Tesla's really pumped up 1010.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot that goes into that. And then there's some people that are just saying like it's a Tesla event, and every Tesla event it sells off. I just, until it doesn't, is
Well,
all I will say.
two of the reveals did not sell off. The some of the other events sold off. And by the way, though, I always remark on this, and I still haven't done the study. I need to do the study. Or AJ, maybe you could do the study. Almost always, even when they sell off, a week later, they're back. They've recovered all of the sell-off and sometimes more than. So
Yeah.
that's my recollection, but I've never done the study. So, all
Yeah,
right.
I'm not a big into timing it here, so I just more
Yeah.
of like
Yeah.
let's understand the business implications of what they reveal on 1010, and just know that nobody is making EVs consistently profitably. And there's a market. If you're just thinking hardware, you're not even thinking about full self-driving, that Tesla hasn't entered into yet, which is sub 30K, which they're going to enter into next year. And so when you see this big month from BYD of 160 or 70,000, by the way, I don't know if those are registrations or those are just shipped into dealerships, probably shipped into
Yeah.
dealerships if
Yeah.
they just got the number already. But when Tesla starts shipping product down at that price tier, you're going to see big numbers out of Tesla. People
Well,
want Teslas.
and you're not only adding the $25,000 car, the Cybertruck will be fully ramped fully ramped for one factory at some point next year. So we'll be talking about 250,000 there. Then you've got the semi truck at some point, either late next year or early 2026. Cyber, did I say cyber? I meant semi. Semi
Yeah.
truck. In addition, so we've got new car, new truck. I mean, there's a lot coming that is going to be pretty dramatic, just as you point out on the hardware side, before you even start thinking about the software side on the semi truck could be one of the biggest deals ever.
Yeah. And I think, by the way, I think for Cybertruck, I think doubling next year would be a big, big feat. I don't think they're going to get to the 250 next year, but we'll see.
To the 20,000 a month, roughly by the end of the year.
Well, they may get to that rate by the end of the
That's
year,
what
but they won't ship. I don't believe they'll ship
250,000 for the
250.
year. No.
They really, yeah. They really have to figure out, like, have they fundamentally figured out the cost picture on this yet? And I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah.
I just know it's a very difficult product for them to build. And when you have some of these issues, sometimes it does take a while to figure it out, but I do think they will. And I think people love their Cybertrucks. There's no question about it.
That is a definite fact. Well, okay, we're going to let you go. I understand there's a reason to believe that your family is waiting for you. So we'll let you go while I go through the numbers for the day.
Thanks, Randy. Have a good one.
Thank you for coming.
See you,
Bye.
everyone. Bye.
All right. So what in fact did happen today in the market? Well, I just gave you a hint a second ago, but maybe you already knew that. We have got Tesla down 9 for the day and 87 cents more in the after hours. We had the Dow Jones up 39.55 for the day. We had the NASDAQ up 14.76 and the S&P up 79 entire cents. So, I'll give you those percentages, but they're not very big. There's 0.09 up for the Dow, 0.08 up for the NASDAQ, and 0.01 for the S&P. The Magnificent Seven were all down, except for Apple barely up, and NVIDIA was up as well, kind of recovering from some of their down action recently. And Cathie Woods were mixed, but mostly down a bit, not really very much. So it's kind of a flat day at the end of the day. And a little bit of action during the middle. It was a great trading day. You may, if you follow carefully, you may know that this morning I said buy, buy, buy. And if you're a day trader, that would have been really good advice this morning, even though it wasn't meant to be trading advice. It would have been good advice to get in and then take your profits halfway through the day and maybe get in again at the end of the day. That's what I would have done when I was day trading. Never going back there, I don't think. Anyway, all right, let's take a look at what else was happening today. Let's go ahead and look at, we can't do the bonds yet, but we'll look over here at the oil. So oil is an interesting one. lots and lots of conversation about the oil market because why? Well, we've got Iran sending missiles to Israel. We've got Hezbollah attacking Israel. We have got the Houthis, and we have the Israelis saying we can be everywhere at once. We can attack Syria on the same day that we attack Gaza on the same day that we attack. We can basically our reach is wide, and then so all of that is of course causing people to think, well, we could have a problem with oil prices. In the meantime, the Saudis were the other day said, oh, you guys better not continue to increase production because otherwise price of oil is going to 50. And then they got slapped down today by other members of OPEC saying, what are you talking about? Anyway, so a lot of stuff going. What we do know is the United States and Brazil are pumping. That's good. It turns out that our current administration is actually putting some oil back into the petroleum reserve. That's good. So where is oil after all of that is said and done? Well, oil is up 81 cents in the pre-market after being, I think it was also up a little bit in the main part of the day, but it's at $70.91. Not exactly a strikingly high number, actually kind of a so-so number. We also had the Brent unchanged in the pre-market, sitting just exactly $3 above Texas Intermediate right now. We got natural gas up another 0.94. Still, though, under $3, has not been able to cross that $3 level, $2.91. Gold up 11.40 in the pre-market, back to 26.81. So maybe tomorrow will be the day that gold takes another run over 2,700, or maybe not. Maybe it'll go the other way. Silver continuing to be very strong, up 0.69 at 32.14, and copper up 0.20 at 4.6, almost 6, 4.685. The dollar unchanged against the euro and up, well, let's call it unchanged against both. That would be far closer to reality, close enough for government work. Bitcoin down again, 1131 for the day, is sitting at 60,729. So that is definitely, so there's two ranges now. This sounds crazy. So you have a range that's 55 to 64, and then you got a range that's 64 to 75. And right now it's sitting in that lower range. And so it kind of tends to bounce back and forth in that range. What about equities? Well, equities, you've got a little bit of positive action going forward. Nothing too startling. The Dow up 30 or 0.07, S&P up 7.5 or 0.13, and the NASDAQ up 3250 or 0.16. So all three showing a tendency, a trend towards being up tomorrow. You got the headline is why the port strike is a no-win situation for the Biden administration. Well, yeah, that's true. He doesn't want to hurt his relationship with the unions, although he personally shouldn't care anymore. He's never going to be running for anything in the future. I guess he would be caring about Kamala, whether she wins or loses, based on whether the unions get even more inclined to vote Republican than they already are. But in the meantime, you've got the opposite, which is people are definitely going to be hurt by this. There is already pictures of shelves in supermarkets that are empty because some people are trying to beat. They're going out and stocking up because they don't want to be out of, guess what's number one, toilet paper, of course. So if you are in the East Coast, certainly in the Southeast, maybe you need to go out and buy some toilet paper. That is not investment advice. Okay, so here we go. So bond market is open. So let me give you the bonds. Bond 10 years unchanged, ended up at 3.78 earlier today, still sitting at 3.785. That is a little bit higher than I'd like to see it, and I believe it'll pop back down over the next few days. You've got the 2-year up 0.9 of a basis point, and so that is actually going the opposite. But that I'm not worried so much about that inversion anymore. It's always more interesting now to look at the 2-month and the 3-month, which are both up barely. The 3-month is up 0.2, and the 2-month is up I said the 3-month is up 0.2 and the 2-month is up 1.2 basis points. So basically no action here that really helps us understand, other than we did have a little pullback from that run up over 3.8 at one point on the 10-year. All right. I think I've told you all the things that I came to tell you today, and some things that I'm surprised because it wasn't on my list, it was on Jeff's list. So if you like this channel, if you like me, if you can even tolerate me, if you learn anything, if you gain anything, consider Patreon. But in the meantime, also hit like, subscribe, and notify. Tomorrow is Cern Basher Day, and at night we'll be having a fun time with Bradford Ferguson. And earlier today, I did a show on the whole McDonald's thing. It was a fun show, and we talked about all the possibilities associated with whether McDonald's is going to do a deal or not. And I went through all kinds of ideas and thoughts. So you might want to go check that one out. There is the card. And with that, I will say it's been great talking to you.